At the all-hands meeting, the CEO pointed at me. "You're too incompetent for engineering. Report to maintenance Monday." Everyone laughed. I smiled and said, "Okay." What they didn't know was that in 48 hours, when their biggest client announced their new technology, my name would be on the patent. My name is Naomi Blake, and I'm 31 years old. The quarterly all-hands meeting was held in the glass atrium of Vector Forge Systems, a place usually meant to symbolize transparency. Today, it felt like an arena. I was a hardware security designer, and the prototype in my lab drawer, a project I called Nightingale, was the best work I had ever done. It was a palm-sized chip, perfect and entirely mine. On stage, our CEO, Graham Sutter, started talking about a massive server outage that had happened over the weekend. A $480,000 loss, he said. His voice was sharp, cutting through the polite morning quiet, not his usual slick salesman tone. Then he put my face on the giant screen behind him. My corporate headshot, my name, and a damning accusation in bold letters. Unauthorized hardware integration. The air went out of the room like a popped balloon. 200 of my colleagues, people I'd eaten lunch with and worked alongside for years, turned in their seats to stare at me. The ambush was complete. Sutter's voice boomed through the speakers, each word a hammer blow, announcing my immediate reassignment to the maintenance department, where I couldn't do any more harm. It was a masterstroke of corporate cruelty designed to destroy my reputation without actually firing me. I saw phones raise, their screens glowing like little digital vultures as my colleagues recorded my professional execution. In the front row, his nephew, Kalen, the one who'd spent the last 6 weeks demanding I add his name to my patent, had a smug, satisfied smile on his face. He looked like a cat who'd finally cornered the mouse. Then Dana Brooks, our HR director, started walking toward me down the center aisle, her heels clicking a death march on the polished concrete floor. She was holding a folded gray janitor's uniform and a new ID badge. The cheap plastic felt like a judgment in my hand. This was my new identity, my new prison. My goal in that moment became primal: survive. My obstacle, the man on the stage, and the entire corporate machine he controlled. They forced a confrontation without a single word. I had to walk the entire length of the atrium, through a sea of silent, staring faces, to accept my demotion and my new life as a ghost in the machine. In her sterile, white-walled office, Dana Brooks slid a document across the desk, her expression as unreadable as a heavily redacted file. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger to a single line in my employment contract. It was the clawback clause. She explained it in a flat, monotone voice. If I quit or was terminated for cause, I'd have to pay back the full $30,000 of my signing bonus. My mind didn't even process the number at first. Instead, it went straight to my mom, Linda. Her multiple sclerosis was a storm we were constantly weathering together, and the latest bill from her treatment center was sitting on my kitchen counter. $52,700. The number felt like a concrete block sitting squarely on my chest, making it hard to breathe. I called her that night, forcing a cheerful tone into my voice, telling her I was just working on a special assignment for a few weeks, something hands-on. The lie felt like swallowing glass, sharp and painful on the way down. My new salary was a 60% pay cut. I couldn't quit, and they had made it clear they wouldn't fire me. I was trapped. The demotion wasn't just about humiliation. It was a carefully constructed financial cage. I decided to fight back the only way I knew how, the official way. I spent an entire night compiling a detailed grievance with HR. I attached every email chain where Sutter and Killen had pressured me for co-inventor status on my work. I documented every meeting, every hallway conversation, where I had politely but firmly refused to sign over the rights to my creation. In my mind, it was a clear-cut case of retaliation, a slam dunk. I laid it all out, a timeline of coercion and intimidation, and hit send, feeling a small spark of hope that the system I'd trusted would actually work. 2 days later, a cold, automated-sounding email from Dana Brooks landed in my inbox. After a thorough review, it read, "We find no evidence of misconduct on the part of Vector Forge management." That was it. No meeting, no follow-up questions. Just a digital door slammed in my face. The system wasn't there to find the truth. It was there to protect the company, and by extension, to protect Sutter. My first tactic, trusting the process, had failed completely. I knew then that I couldn't go through the wall they had built around themselves. I had to find a door no one else even knew existed. My new boss was Ed Morales, the head of maintenance. He'd been with the company for 22 years and had the quiet, watchful eyes of a man who missed nothing and said little. He met me in the basement supply room, the air smelling of bleach and old coffee. He didn't ask questions about what happened in the atrium. He just handed me a gray uniform and a master key card. "This one opens more doors than Sutter's," he said with a slight, knowing look, and in that quiet moment, I knew I had a silent ally. Pushing a mop bucket after hours, I became invisible. Executives who would have stiffened up if I walked past them in my old role would hold sensitive conversations right in front of me, assuming the person in the gray uniform was deaf, dumb, or both. I learned more about the company's real business in a week of cleaning floors than I had in 3 years of designing ships. And then I saw it. In Keelan's newly assigned lab space, sitting on an anti-static mat like his own crown jewel, was my decoy prototype. It was a flawed, deliberately weakened version I'd built for internal demos. He was treating it like he had built it from scratch. My new job was giving me a map of the battlefield. I learned the building's secrets, the security camera blind spots, the server room ventilation shafts, the schedules of the night shift security guards who were more interested in their phones than their monitors. One night, as I was emptying trash cans, Ed mentioned offhandedly that Killan's team was pulling an all-nighter. He then accidentally left a supply closet unlocked, a closet that he knew shared an air vent with their lab. I slipped inside, the darkness smelling of sawdust and disinfectant. Through the vent, I heard Keelan on the phone, his voice slick with false confidence, pitching his encryption module to someone he called a private security client. It was a blatant side deal, using company resources to line his own pockets. This was it, the first piece of hard, undeniable evidence. He wasn't just a credit-stealing bully, he was an active thief. After his team finally cleared out around 2 a.m., Ed met me by the lab door and swiped his card. "Floor needs a buffing," he said, and walked away. Inside, on a large table, were my original design notes, reprinted with Kalen's name in the header block. I took out my phone and photographed everything. The doctored notes, the whiteboard covered in my equations, the lab's digital access log showing his late-night entries. I was done trying to persuade anyone. Now I would prosecute. And then, on a monitor left on in the corner, I saw a calendar invite that made my blood run cold. Cascade Quantum Pre-Brief. They were about to show my flawed decoy to our biggest and most important client. The clock was officially ticking. The truth hit me with the force of a physical blow. Trying to win a fight inside Vector Forge was like trying to win a fist fight with a building. The structure was designed to protect itself, not me. My battlefield had to be outside the company walls. The next day, on my lunch break, I went to a public library miles from my home, a place where no one would know my face. I used one of their public computers to create a new, anonymous email address. My hands were shaking slightly as I typed out a message to Dr. Priya Shah, the CEO of Cascade Quantum. The subject line was direct. The photonic module you're about to see is a fraud. In the body of the email, I kept it short and to the point. I told her I was the real inventor. I explained that Vector Forge, led by Graham Sutter, was preparing to present a flawed, stolen decoy of my work. To prove it, I attached a single damning image. A side-by-side photo showing my original patent application, time-stamped a year earlier, next to a photo of the decoy board sitting in Kaylin's lab. The dates didn't lie. I asked for a meeting, a chance to show her the real thing. It was the biggest gamble of my life. She could delete the email, or worse, forward it straight to Sutter. If that happened, my life at Vector Forge, and likely my career in the industry, would be over. She replied in less than an hour from her personal account. The message was just 6 words and a room number. The Fairmont Hotel, Suite 1200, 9 p.m. In Priya's hotel suite that night, overlooking the lights of the city, I laid out the whole ugly story. The constant pressure from Sutter, the public humiliation in the atrium, the decoy project, and Kellen's obvious attempt to sell it on the side. I didn't need to embellish anything. The simple facts were damning enough. Then, I reached into my bag and took out the real Project Nightingale. It was smaller, more elegant, and far more powerful than the clunky decoy Kaylin was parading around. I connected it to my laptop and ran a live diagnostic, right there on her coffee table. I showed her not only its superior encryption speed, but its defining feature, an ethical failsafe I had woven into its very architecture, a line of code that made it impossible for the chip to ever be used for illegal mass surveillance. It was a feature Kellen's decoy, I noted, conveniently lacked. Priya, a brilliant engineer in her own right long before she became a CEO, saw it instantly. She saw the deception, the stolen labor, and the massive opportunity it represented. She didn't hesitate. She looked me straight in the eye and offered me an exclusive licensing agreement, right then and there. $2 million up front and a generous per-unit royalty that would change my life forever. But there was one condition, a timed announcement. At their upcoming conference in Seattle, in exactly 48 hours, she would unveil my technology under my name. I said yes. My goal was no longer just to survive. It was to burn their kingdom to the ground with the truth. Sutter must have sensed something was wrong. He couldn't prove anything, but a cornered animal always knows when the hunter is near. He sent a company-wide memo, a thinly veiled threat disguised in corporate jargon about the severe legal consequences of sharing proprietary information with outside parties. The email was sent to everyone, but it was meant only for me. It was a warning shot. The next day, the locks on the entire research and development wing were changed. Kellen personally stood there and oversaw the installation, a smug look on his face as the technicians worked. Ed's master keycard was now just a piece of plastic when it came to those doors. My physical access to my old world was completely gone. Then, Sutter called Ed into his office. Ed came out an hour later, his face grim and pale. He walked past me in the hallway and wouldn't meet my eyes. He couldn't talk to me anymore, couldn't help me. I found out later they had threatened his pension, the nest egg he had spent 22 years building. They were isolating me, systematically cutting off my allies one by one, leaving me totally alone. The final move was a calendar invite that appeared in my inbox from Dana Brooks in HR. It was for a mandatory performance review for my maintenance role. It was scheduled for Monday morning at exactly 9 a.m., the precise moment Priya was set to walk onto the stage at the convention center. They weren't just isolating me, they were building me a cage, planning to have me trapped in an HR office while my fate was decided across town. Ed found a way. It was the last thing he could do for me. As he passed me in the corridor, He dropped a wadded-up piece of paper into the trash can he knew I'd be emptying next. I retrieved it later, my heart pounding. It was a crumpled shipping label. The recipient was a data brokerage firm, a shady outfit known for packaging and selling surveillance technology to the highest, and often the most unsavory, bidder. It all clicked into place, a horrifying final puzzle piece. Keelan wasn't just trying to make a small side deal, he was trying to sell my invention as a weapon. I suddenly understood the true genius of the decoy I'd built 18 months earlier. Not just as a flawed model, but as a trap. It contained a hidden digital watermark, a secret signature I had embedded deep in its core. If anyone tried to repurpose its code for surveillance, the chip's performance would deliberately crash, and it would send a single encrypted ping to a private server I controlled. I raced home after my shift, my hands slick with sweat. I logged into my server, and there it was. A single ping. The timestamp was from just 2 hours ago. The Internet Protocol address belonged to the data brokerage firm on the shipping label. They had taken the bait. My trap had been sprung. My last safe option vanished in that instant. I had a file of evidence ready to go, a neat package I was planning to send to Harold Kim, the chairman of the board. I had held on to a sliver of hope that he at least was a man of integrity and might intervene. But this changed everything. A publicly traded company caught selling surveillance technology on the side? The board wouldn't fix that problem. They would bury it. And they would bury me right along with it to keep it quiet. A quiet, internal solution was officially off the table. As if on cue, an email from Priya came through on my phone. Stage is set. Press kits are finalized. See you on the other side. 48 hours. The countdown was real, and it was closing in on me. I was completely cornered, out of options and out of time. I spent the next 4 hours building a digital bomb. I created a secure online archive, a web page protected by a password that would expire in 24 hours. Inside, I uploaded everything. Kalen's doctored notes, a high-resolution photo of the shipping label, the server log showing the watermark ping with its timestamp, and even the mathematical proof behind the watermark itself, showing how it was designed to fail. I scheduled it to be delivered to every single board member and to 3 of the biggest tech journalists in the country at exactly 9 a.m. on Monday. The pin was pulled. The night before the reveal, there was a sharp, loud knock at my apartment door. My heart leaped into my throat. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peered through the peephole and saw a courier in a generic uniform. He handed me a thick, heavy envelope and left without a word. I tore it open. It was a cease and desist letter from Vector Forge's army of corporate lawyers. It accused me, in dense, threatening language, of corporate espionage. It threatened a lawsuit that would not only take every penny I had, but would indebt me for the rest of my natural life. They knew, somehow, they knew I was planning something. My stomach turned to ice. It was the same crushing feeling I had as a child. The weight of being the one who always had to hold everything together, the one who was always expected to absorb the blows and lose gracefully. The letter was Sutter's final, personal message to me, his way of saying, "I will break you." I was completely, utterly alone. I couldn't call my mom and worry her. I couldn't reach Ed. They were watching him now. Priya was in her own pre-conference bubble, preparing for the biggest launch of her company's year. It was just me, the threatening letter, and the deafening tick of the clock. The only thing left was faith. Faith in an automated email I'd scheduled hours ago. Faith in the deal I'd made with a woman I'd only met once. Faith that after walking through hell, all I had to do was take one more step. I walked into the glass atrium wearing my maintenance uniform one last time. It was my armor and my camouflage. No one paid any attention to the woman cleaning a smudge off a glass panel in the back of the room. A giant screen was set up, live streaming the feed from the Cascade Quantum Conference. The room was buzzing with anticipation. Graham Sutter stood at a podium at the front, basking in the attention. He was talking about a bold new era of partnership and the homegrown innovation that made it all possible. A smug, self-congratulatory smile plastered on his face. Kellen stood beside him, preening for the crowd like a prince. At exactly 9 a.m., my phone vibrated silently in my pocket. A single word on the screen: sent. My digital bomb had just been delivered to the board and the press. On the giant screen, Priya Shah walked into the spotlight. The room fell silent. She began to speak about the future of data security, about the need for trust and transparency in our digital lives. Then, with a practiced flourish, she unveiled a small, elegant chip. "We call it Lattice Shield," she said, her voice clear and strong, echoing through the silent atrium. The next slide that projected onto the massive screen was a high-resolution copy of the official patent filing. The inventor's name was listed in 72-point font: Naomi Blake. A wave of shocked gasps and confused murmurs rolled through the atrium. I watched Sutter's smile freeze, crack, and then crumble into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. Priya then calmly explained the technology's core feature: its built-in ethical fail-safe, its inability to be used for illegal spying. She performed a live demo of the digital watermark, showing a global audience how my decoy chip was specifically designed to expose thieves. All at once, phones around the room started chiming and vibrating with news alerts. Cascade's press kit had just gone live. It announced an exclusive licensing deal with me, and only me. And it detailed, in excruciatingly clear language, the penalty clause. Any retaliation or hostile action against me from Vector Forge would cost the company $12.5 million a quarter. Sutter looked like he'd been physically punched in the gut. He staggered back a step from the podium. At the back of the room, I saw the chairman of the board, Harold Kim, his face a mask of thunder. He locked eyes with me from across the room and jerked his head sharply toward the executive elevators. As I walked past the chaos and the panicked whispers, Ed Morales, who was standing near the doors, caught my eye. He didn't say a word. He just gave me a slow, proud nod. The war was over. Up in the boardroom, the atmosphere was frigid. The board acted with the swift, brutal efficiency of a body trying to cauterize a wound. Sutter and Kellen were suspended indefinitely, effective immediately. Their corporate accounts were frozen, and their security badges deactivated before they even knew what was happening. Harold Kim, his voice low and steady, offered me a new role, Director of Product Integrity, with full autonomy and a direct report to the board. I accepted. My first official recommendation was a significant promotion and a long-overdue bonus for Ed Morales. The company was in chaos, but the poison was finally being drained from the system. From the boardroom's panoramic window, I could see the atrium, where I'd been so publicly humiliated just weeks before, now the scene of my quiet vindication. My old maintenance badge was sitting on the polished mahogany table, right next to the contract for my new life. That afternoon, I made 2 calls. The first was to my mom's medical billing office to pay off her entire $52,700 debt in full. The second was to my mom, to tell her that everything was finally, truly going to be okay. My final act was to create a new system. Using 20% of my incoming royalties, I established a $100,000 annual fund at Vector Forge. a legal safety net designed to help young engineers protect their work from corporate predators. I had survived, and now I would rebuild the system so that thieves like Sutter could never thrive there again. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to fight for what was rightfully yours? Tell us your story in the comments. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next video.